How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi, host of Tier Talk, and I'm going to quickly do a video on inmate accountability in regards to movement. So basically, the tracking and communication that must be in place when an inmate goes from one area to another. Now, I did a video on this before, mostly dialogue, and it was requested of me if I could do a video in which I can kind of draw it out, because the person that's requesting the video understood exactly what I was trying to get at, but they're trying to explain it, and I guess the way I explained it in dialogue may be a little bit complicated. So I went to Staples, bought a whitewash board, if you will. You know, the ones with those expo markers. So when we cut back after the sponsors, we're going to go right to that board, and I'm going to explain what I meant from the last video. Some people understand it. Some people say, you know, I guess they want to just kind of see it visually. And why not? I do what you guys request. So today is going to kind of be training 101. We're going to be talking about inmate movement from one area to another. And we've got to see how that can be applied at your facility. So again, guys, this show is for you, those brave men and women who work behind the wall. So if you haven't, guys, please comment, interact, engage, subscribe, and hit that bell. The bell's going to notify you every time I post up a video. I stand by for our sponsors.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it. It's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Being a corrections officer takes its toll on even the strongest individuals. The constant need to perform at the highest level, putting your life at risk in a hostile environment, and the mental scarring of traumatic experiences. 31% of corrections officers show symptoms of PTSD, and 66% of people with PTSD also suffer with a substance abuse problem. The Transformations First Responders program is specially designed to help veterans and officers heal from the grips of addiction and PTSD in a comfortable, supportive, and serene setting. You are not alone. If you have questions about the services we offer, give us a call at 866-762-8454 to get more information on this affordable and life-changing program.
All right, thank you guys for listening to my sponsors. So I'm going to try to explain this quick. It shouldn't take long. It's just about inmate accountability. And when I explained it in my last video, it was recommended that I kind of draw a little bit of a diagram. So guys, this may be rather crude, but I went out and bought a watchboard. So I want to try to make sure that I kind of get the points across. So the S here is for sending. So this is going to technically be the housing unit. Okay? This is going to be a checkpoint. So this would be considered, let's say, traffic control. We could do that. That's fine. That's a centralized area where the inmates have to walk through. And this would be the receiving area. So let's make the receiving area for this incident a job location. So let's just say it's food service. And I'll get to this later. This is something I want to add in a little later, but let's say I'm going to call this the infirmary. But there's a reason why I had that in place. So let me just get this in frame. So the housing unit, the checkpoint, which would consider traffic control if you wish, food service, we'll say that's a job movement, and then we'll get to the infirmary later. Okay, so the key when you have a movement, this is all about control, because now the inmates are leaving from one area to another, and every step of their movement must be watched, must be controlled. So I'm going to keep numbers low, but let's say for this incident, we're going to have 4 inmates that got to come out of this housing unit to food service. Now check this out, guys. In order to keep control, it's good to house jobs, if possible, in the same housing units. And I'll give you an example for that. Let's say in food service have a lot of controlled items, a lot of tools that are in there. And let's say for some reason those tools go missing. Well, if by chance we find out late and there was already inmates, because mistakes happen, that were already sent back to the unit, we know, hopefully if we catch it in time, that it could only be between two areas. It could only be between this area here, which is the food service area, and the housing unit where all the food service workers come from. Plus, especially now with understaffed facilities, it's a lot easier for us to monitor movement when it's not so spread out. So it's good to see like one movement come from this area here. I'm just talking about jobs. Obviously, you know, you're going to have other movements that are going to have to be spread out, like because it's offered to more people in the population, like educational programs or social service programs. But I'm just talking about jobs. We have a little bit of control of that. So if you work a certain job at a certain time, then you have to come from this area. And I think that's just a great idea because it keeps the traffic controlled. So again, if I work food service at this point of the day, then I come from this housing unit. So if something goes missing, I know it can only be between these two areas, especially hopefully if you catch it in time. Now, the key here is the communication from the sending officer to the receiving officer. Now again, however you gotta apply this to where you're at, again, I'm just giving you general advice. Hopefully it can be universally applied. But in the meantime here, this is key. The communication between this sending officer and the receiving officer is key. It's paramount. I can't stress that enough. And sometimes for some reason, that communication gets lost. But guys, the communication between these two officers is paramount. So again, food service movement gets called out, and again, keep numbers small. Let's say that this officer's got to let out 4 inmates to go to the checkpoint, and then from the checkpoint to be given over to food service. Somewhere along the line, this officer's got to announce that 4 inmates are coming out of his unit to go to food service. That's to notify the traffic control, the checkpoint, if you will, and then for checkpoint to kind of control that. They're going to know specifically, the checkpoint is going to know specifically which inmates are coming and where they need to go, and they'll go ahead and make sure that those 4 get to food service. Now, what's good about this at this point is this officer here in the receiving area knows he's only supposed to get 4 inmates. So if by chance he gets 3 and he hears, let's say over the radio, that the movement is closed, he may go ahead and call the checkpoint and say, hey, I need 1 more inmate. Checkpoint's going to say, well, let's find out where that inmate is. So he automatically already got it out there that he did not get that 4th inmate. The checkpoint may double check to see if 4 came through, may call the unit, but we got the communication going. That's the key. So somewhere along the line, from the housing unit to the checkpoint, or the checkpoint to the receiving area, we lost an inmate, but we're on it immediately. We are on it immediately. That's key. That dialogue should not wait till there's the officer needs to take account for institutional mandated count. No, that should be done immediately. Once the 4 inmates reach your area and you hear over the radio that movement is done, that officer now should literally say, okay, 4 are in my area. So again, you got the communication. I'm sending you 4, and I got 4. You know, you can even have some communication with the checkpoint, but the key is to have the communication between the sending and the receiving. I sent you 4, I'm sending you 4 over the radio, then you wait a few minutes, and then maybe there's a little communication from the food service area. Receive 4 from, let's just call this one A. Receive 4 from A unit. So A unit sending out 4, checkpoint, food service to A unit, receive 4. So we know that the 4 have got to that point. Now, later on, they can give a call to each other over the phone. That's why the institution should allow those phone calls to say, hey, these are the 4 you sent me. These are the 4 I got. And make sure the numbers match so we're all on the same page that the 4 inmates you sent me are the 4 inmates that I was supposed to have. So that's that point. And also, guys, when the inmates leave your unit, you're responsible for the moment they leave, just kind of frisking them, making sure that, you know, they don't have any contraband on them. Then when they go through the checkpoint, you know, support staff's there, going to be checking them, doing maybe random pat searches if need be, or maybe they pat search them all. It is a food service movement. And then definitely food service will be Pat frisking them in. But because there's metal tools here and stuff like that, I would like to go as far as that these inmates should be stripped before they leave. So again, same thing happening on the way there, on the way back. I check my inmates before they leave. Checkpoint checks on them, so that's 2 fail-safes already. And then the receiving officer checks on them as soon as they get there. Okay? And then vice versa on the way back. And again, when it comes to tools that you're keeping track in your area, inmates should not leave whenever they want. They should have set times where they leave in bulk. And that means that the officer, let's say in food service, before he lets any inmate leave, he makes sure all the tools are accounted for before he sends that inmate back to the checkpoint and then back to the unit. You do not let any inmate out of that area until all your tools are checked. Now, God forbid this officer slips and becomes complacent. The good thing here, and again, it's only if the officer becomes complacent and does not do what they're supposed to do, is because all the inmates came from this unit, I know that if I'm missing a tool and I know it quick enough, and I did let some inmates out and I'm kind of right behind trying to find out where this tool is, I know that it has to be hopefully in the A housing unit area. So again, now we lock down both areas immediately. We lock down the food service and we lock down the A housing unit, and if need be, check the areas in the controlled traffic point. But again, remember, there's only so many ways the inmates can go here. There's a direct route that they need to take. So that should be pretty easy for the GAs to check on. And again, or the support staff. So, you know, again, we lock down the receiving area and we lock down the area that all the food service workers came from. It's a lot harder if they're coming from different units, because now you have to lock down multiple units and it just becomes a little bit difficult. Okay, I got one more thing I want to mention. Sometimes when an inmate's at work, they may have, let's say for an example, a medical appointment. Okay? So now the infirmary needs an inmate from this housing unit who is now working here. So how should this infirmary officer get the inmate he needs? Like, what's the steps here? So basically, the infirmary officer is going to call the housing unit first. Say, hey, do you have such and such inmate? They're going to say, no, right now this inmate is actually in food service. The right thing for this officer to do now is to tell this infirmary officer, hold on, I'll give a call to food service, have that inmate sent back to me, and then I will go ahead and send that inmate to you. This way, this officer and the housing unit is aware at all times where his inmates are. So again, if this officer had 4 inmates in food service, but now the infirmary is requesting one, this officer calls food service, tells food service, I need this inmate back. This inmate goes through the checkpoint, goes back to the housing unit. Then from the housing unit, they are sent back to the infirmary because they're asking for them. And now the officer knows they have 3 in food service, 1 in the infirmary. There's no, it's just not correct for this housing unit officer to tell the infirmary that this inmate is not here, please call food service. That should not happen, because that's how we're going to start losing track of that inmate. We always should call the point of origin of where those inmates are coming from originally, and then have them be the foundation of where that inmate goes. So you go here, then you go to wherever you got to go. So basically, if the inmate's in food service, you go back here, so I know you're back in my unit, I take account of you, now I'm sending you to another location. So the infirmary should not be calling food service for that inmate. They should be calling the housing unit, and the housing unit should be calling food service. And at no point, as I mentioned before, should the inmate, without going through the housing unit first, go from food service to that infirmary. Wow, this looks like a... But I'm sure it made sense. I hope. But as always, guys, please tell me what you think. The show is Tier Talk. Kind of see me real quick. As always, guys, if you haven't, the show is for you. So please, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell's going to notify you every time I post up a video. I did this because someone asked me if I could explain it. So I went out and bought a washboard and tried to create a little bit of a diagram. Hopefully it can be utilized. Again, every facility has a different layout, but I think there's some principles here, or some methods that could be followed at most all facilities, including the key here, which is communication. That's the key. I can't stress that enough. The communication between the housing officer and the receiving officers. So in this case here, housing officer to food service, and eventually the housing officer to the infirmary. As always, guys, thank you for listening. The show is Tier Talk, and be safe.